This is Sporecast,
where we talk about mold, health, and the spaces that we live in.
Where personal experience meets real conversation.
Where we ask better questions about what's making people sick.
And where no one has to navigate it alone.
Thank you for listening to Sporecast. Before we get started, just a quick note. This podcast is for informational and personal experience purposes only. We are not medical professionals and nothing shared here should be taken as medical advice. We all come from different backgrounds and perspectives, so the opinions shared are our own and may not reflect each other or apply to every situation. Always do your own research and consult with a qualified professional when needed. Thank you and enjoy the show. Hey, Stacey, how are you?
Hey, Baylie, I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good. So I have been looking forward to doing this episode with you. I had you in mind for all of these topics that I've been thinking of because there's such a big mental health aspect to it, and you're a therapist, so obviously I thought it would be a good match.
Good fit, yeah.
And then we are both kind of in the same phase where we're post-remediation. So I just thought that this would be a good topic for the both of us to talk about.
Yeah, I totally agree. Absolutely.
Yeah, so this is kind of a topic that no one really talks about. They talk about the darkness of during remediation or before remediation, but I don't think that adjusting to life after remediation comes up as much as it should.
Yeah, I don't think it gets enough language and it doesn't get enough story because there's so much grief and trauma with finding out there's mold and all the layers and the complexity to that. But then it's like, okay, the aftermath of that. And I think people think that, okay, you've been healing and maybe you've gotten some of the things done in the home that, you should be better and things should be better. And I don't think that there's enough discussion and understanding about how you now are just kind of picking up the pieces. You're dealing with all of those parts of your life that you have lost and, your stability, your identity, all of those things at once have just kind of compounded. And I think that when you're in remediation mode and, trying to heal your family, that you are like a master at that time. Like you are just like marking things off the list, going to the next thing. It feels 24/7. I'm sure you felt that way. Like you're barely sleeping.
Oh, yeah.
You're researching, you're doing all kinds of stuff. And so I think when remediation is over, I say that in quotations because we're going to talk a little bit about how it may not always be over, that then you have to start to feel things.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I'm at right now is I'm left with what the heck just happened, Like I'm over it, but not really over it. But now I'm just sitting there looking in the past and I'm like, wait, what was that? What was that?
Was that even my life? Did that even really happen? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I also so I was in survival mode the whole time. And so I kind of I saved a lot of my worries. Like I told myself, I'm not going to think about finances. I'm not going to try to fix any relationships. I'm not going to take care of all of these things until after remediation because I'm just in survival mode. And then when you get to that point and you've saved all of these problems for yourself for later, it's like, okay, now I have to deal with all of these other things.
That's a really great point. And for a lot of us, remediation didn't last a couple of months. I mean, our remediation was at least 2 years. And I know yours was it was ongoing. So you're talking about being in survival mode for that long where your nervous system is extremely dysregulated and you're either having to I know we try to put some things off, but we probably didn't get to put everything off, but then
Right.
Then you flip over and you're like, okay, now I have to deal with all this stuff that I was kind of waiting to get to. That's a lot of stuff after 2 years. What did that look like for you? Like when you were in survival mode, like did you feel like you missed out on things like with you? I know your kids are young. I have my kids are a little bit older than yours, but well, two of mine are a lot older than your kids. But what did that look like for you for the past couple of years? Did you feel like you were losing time or missing out on things with them?
Yeah, so my son was about 5, I think, when this started, and my daughter was months old. And I don't remember a lot of the past couple of years, so I am missing out on milestones, of their life in my head. I also, and this comes up whenever I go to our storage unit, which has all of our stuff from that time of our lives. It's just like a time capsule of where they were in their stages of life. And when they're that young, it just goes by so fast. So so now they're 2 and 7, and we've just missed out on so many milestones. And again, I don't remember a lot of their childhood now. A big chunk is missing. And so that's something that I've really been grieving lately.
Yeah. Yeah.
How about for you?
Yeah, I think that's one of the big things that is so important for us to talk about is those invisible losses. Like everyone knows your health, your finances, your stability, sometimes your house, sometimes your clothes, sometimes, the material items you have. But I think for the moms, it's those invisible losses of like, not I think it's already hard on us anyways because a lot of us are working moms now too. So it's like we're already missing things. We're already not able to juggle all of those balls, and we try to hold on to those special moments, like you said. But when you're dealing with almost being a contractor in your everyday life of managing the remediation and you're sick and you have brain fog and you're chronic fatigue and all those other things and you're worried about your children and how sick they are and you're making all these doctor's appointments, like you really are like I don't remember. My son is 10 now. And I do not, this last episode of this house we've been remediating for 2 years, but we were sick several years before that. So it's been 4 or 5 years. And then before that, we were in a different house where he was really small and we were sick there too. So I didn't know what it was then, but I don't remember how he learned to tie his shoe. I don't remember when or how he learned to ride a bike. I may have been there. I may have taught him, or maybe his sisters did. I don't remember, but I don't have any recollection of that, and that's really hard. And then even 2 years ago, my oldest daughter, the day my oldest daughter graduated high school, is the day that I had the consult for the Army that I had turned in. And I had to take that call during work that day. And I worked at her high school at the time. So I was involved in all the senior festivities and the graduation stuff for that day. And I had to pause, take that consult, and hear that my house that was 5 years old was worse than a 50-year-old home. And I needed to walk away and leave it. And I held that day. I held that for myself and did not tell anyone because I didn't want to tell, obviously, my kids. I didn't even want to tell my husband. I just didn't want to speak it out loud. I wanted to hold it in a box somewhere so that I could try. And I will say that I do remember her graduation and I do feel like I was there, but I think it's because I made that decision to put that away for the day. But it is just such a hard thing to do when you're not being able to be fully present with your kids, feeling like time disappeared and like you don't recognize yourself as a mom anywhere. There's a deep sense of loss and guilt and sadness and grief in that.
Right. Yeah. I'm grieving because my daughter was a baby and we didn't get to go through the baby phase. We're just now putting her bedroom together and she's 2. And I just feel like that's kind of the process of having a baby is you have all of these expectations of what it's going to be like the first couple of years of their lives. There were things that I didn't even get to use from the baby shower There were clothes. You start gathering clothes, right, when you're pregnant. There were clothes that she just completely grew out of that we never got to use. And so, yeah, there's just so many aspects um, of my kids' childhood that I feel like I lost.
Yeah, when they're babies, like you said, they're hitting milestones really quickly, like from month to month. And that's hard to stay present anyways, but when you have the level of brain fog and cognitive disability at the time, like it's very hard to tune into all that and be fully present in that.
Yeah. And so I feel like, yeah, it's sad for me, but also I hope that they didn't see that. I hope that it didn't come across that I wasn't present on their side, but I couldn't tell you because I don't remember.
Yeah, that's true. And I'm sure that we do a better job than we think we're doing at the time. So I'm sure you did, you know.
Yeah.
But I think those are the big feelings that come with that is maybe the guilt or the shame that we feel that we didn't provide a safe space or we didn't. For me, in my situation, I had a lot of mom guilt around the fact that my two oldest girls were in the basement. That's where their bedrooms were. That hit me one day when on my TikTok, one of my followers had mentioned that, well, my mom put me in the basement, and that's why I got so sick. And oh my gosh, did I have a meltdown that day? Because I was like, wait, that's what my kids could say about me. Is my mom put me in the basement?
Yeah.
And the way our house had to be built, it was there's not enough flat land, so we had to build like the basement. And at the time, we were like, oh, they were a little bit older, and we were like, girls, you guys can have your own space down here. You're gonna have your own bathroom. You're gonna have your bedrooms, and we're gonna have a little living area, and they have a pool table, like. But we had to remediate that entire thing and they got sick down there. So it wasn't like, oh, I just stuck my kids in the basement kind of thing. It was supposed to be fun. It was supposed to be neat. And actually my other daughter is graduating next week. So here we are 2 years later with my second daughter graduating. And I went downstairs. Our downstairs is fully fixed, and redone after October of last year. And I went down there and I thought to myself, there's not been any kids down here playing on this pool table. There's been not any happy moments. There's not been friends over, because even though we got that kind of fixed before she graduated, it was only about 6 months. And we didn't get to have that. Like, I wanted to be that mom who had all the friends over and feeding them, and they get to stay at my house till midnight, kind of thing. And that never happened. And now she's graduating in a week, so
Yeah, and you don't get to redo that. So
you don't get to redo it.
it's something that you do have to grieve and mourn. Yeah. What you said about having a safe space for your kids kind of hit me because I remember like having to tell my 5-year-old son, you have to leave your room, you have to leave your house, you have to leave your cats, you have to leave all of your toys. And he took it really well. Then we come back and now he's kind of outgrown all of his toys and clothes and everything from that stage. So
And he didn't get to experience that.
yeah, and from 5 to 7 is such a big difference because a 7-year-old is kind of getting into a big kid. So yeah, it's I feel sad for my kids too that they had to leave their safe space and everything that they loved.
Yeah. And then another thing for me on that was a couple of different dynamics with my kids being at such different times in their development. And one of them graduates, goes off to college. She's coming home and her bedroom's gone. So she's adjusting to college life and wanting to come home to her bedroom. And even though it wasn't really a safe space because of the mold toxicity in her mind, she couldn't see the mold. She, you know, she wasn't like, oh, this is not a safe place for me. Really only mom's the one saying this is not a safe place. And I mean,
Yeah.
that can bring a whole nother discussion in a minute, but maybe the resentment people feel towards us about the mold. But, um, here she is coming home from college and missing her home, and doesn't have her bedroom. And she's an 18-year-old kid, and that's their bedroom. That's where they want to go. That's their sanctuary. So when we did and we ended up having to, take everything out of that basement, and we only have two bedrooms upstairs. So my son's bedroom and then my bedroom, but his bedroom is it's kind of on the small side. It's for a kid, right? So we have all three of them. We have I think she was 16 at the time and 18 at the time when she was home, which we did remediate over the summer. So she was home. All three had to be upstairs in his bedroom. So we had taken tons of stuff to storage, gotten rid of a bunch of stuff again, throwing away more couches, brand new couches, and having to replace things, throwing away mattresses for a second time, and fixing a bed for them up there and having just like the rails to hang clothes on. And I mean, they were all three in there, and she was upset because she wanted to be in her room for the summer. It was her first summer back, so that was an adjustment. And then there was another time we moved out of our house completely and then came back. That was before we remediated their rooms. So we had moved out, and they were kind of like transitioning and couldn't find their stuff. This thing is in this tub, and it's just crazy.
Yes.
Stayed gone for like 3 months, came back, got back adjusted to being at home and in the basement, and then realized we had to remediate and move them out again. So it was just being all over the place. And one of my daughters was experiencing, I know this has been something that you've been dealing with, but pans and pandas. And when they're dealing with that, they're not regulating, they can't regulate themselves. And not that that's not a big deal, but everything is just exaggerated. And there's a lot of OCD type behaviors, and there's a lot of separation anxiety stuff. And there was a time where she didn't want to leave her room, and she was a happy, well adjusted, social butterfly wanting to go everywhere and do everything. And she had even been invited to play on a soccer team, a travel team, where she was going to get to fly to another state and do all this wonderful, fun stuff, and couldn't go because of the separation anxiety at the time. And that was not her. Like, that was a totally different person. But, I had to move her out of her room, and I had to take her blanket, and I had to take her teddy bear. I know
Yeah.
she's a teenager, but she had this teddy bear since she was little, which I did take all the stuffing out, buy new stuffing for it, completely washed it. It was one of those that you put the little heartbeats and it makes, sounds in
Yeah.
it. Took all of that stuff out, washed it in my wash machine, in the ozone machine, to the attachment I have, so it could get the mycotoxins out,
Yeah.
and restuffed it and re-sewed everything back in. So I was able to keep that for her, because she would have probably never forgiven me if I would have thrown that away.
That's actually such a good idea. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah,
That's such a good
I made
idea.
them throw a lot of the stuffed animals away that didn't mean anything to them, but anything that they wanted to keep, that's what I did to save it. And it worked. It really did work. I could tell a big difference in that. So that's a little trick you can do, but
As a mom, you know that you're making the right decision, but your kids don't really understand that. And so that's like a battle that's, I imagine, is hard. I feel like I didn't quite experience that because at 0 and 5, my kids were just like, oh, this is new. My son was sad that he had to leave his stuff, but it was also an adventure for him. And I don't think he experienced the sadness until we came home, and then he realized, like, oh, I missed out on all of this stuff the last couple of years. But so yeah, I didn't really experience that, but I can imagine where your kids are older and kind of understand more of what's going on, that would be hard, having to navigate, like, knowing that you're making the right decision, but your kid's not quite understanding.
yeah, it was definitely hard. And I think that they see it now, because they've been healing and they've been feeling better. And there was evidence of the mold in the drywall. If we would have ripped the whole basement apart and there would have been nothing, I'm sure I would have gotten an earful, right? But no, at the beginning of it all, I think just like anybody, there's just that can't believe that this is real. Can't believe that mold could really be affecting us this way. And I don't think that they believed it, or I don't think that they understood it enough at the beginning. And it was, like you said, hard to make those choices as a mom, to take those things away from them and to, just basically uproot them from what they know, their schedule, their routine, their house, their stuff, and when I was saying that, about talking about that, about the resentment aspect, is I think we have resentment in certain things. Like for me, it was, resenting what had made our house mess up, the building defects and what had happened. But also other people resenting us. It kind of felt like for me that, like, because I figured it out, that I was getting the blame for it. It's almost like, I don't know, like if I was to find drugs in like my kid's bedroom, that I would get blamed that they were using drugs because I found it. That's what it felt like to me. Like I'm getting blamed for this, just because I figured it out, or just because I figured out that that's why we were sick.
Yeah, well, and I think an aspect to that is that it's not, society doesn't necessarily think it's normal yet, and it's not mainstream. So if there were a fire, I imagine that your kids wouldn't blame you for needing to leave the house or, fix the house. But since A, you can't see it, and B, it's not a mainstream thing that's talked about in society, I think that also adds to the confusion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard people say that a lot. I've even heard people say, and I felt this too, like if my house would just, if it would just burn, fine, let it burn. And most people, I feel like that's a way to understand how bad the mold toxicity, the mold issue is when you're dealing with your house with mold in it, that you would literally almost be okay with it just burning down.
Right.
you know,
Yeah. Yep, exactly. I think that's a really good way to explain
Because
it.
most people would be devastated, right, if their house burned down. I mean, not that we would want to lose all of our stuff, but at the same time, it's like we're already losing it. We have no way to replace it. There's no insurance money to use. There's no, and like you said, it's visible. People can see that your house burned down. And, usually when someone's house burns down, they get put on a prayer list and they get given donations and people bring them food and they get taken care of. And that's not what happens, when your house has mold. And another thing, I had someone tell me that, and you could probably speak to this, but, when you have other illnesses that are more recognized, especially in Western medicine, and even though they seem really hard and that you might could, die from them, I've actually heard some people say they'd rather deal with those other sicknesses or illnesses because there's a plan, there's understanding, there's not medical gaslighting, and that the mold toxicity was actually harder for them.
Yeah, I completely relate to that, especially the brain fog. I feel like I had to pretend that I was normal and things were normal, especially when talking to other people. You feel like you have to overcompensate because you can't say, hey, look, I'm dealing with such and such illness. You're dealing with mold illness, so you just don't really bring it up, but you don't quite know how to explain, like, look, I am not operating how I used to operate. I'm not exactly the same person. So yeah, I definitely relate to that. And then it it like sometimes people talk to you like you're the reason this is happening, like just get out of this or fix this or just get over it, and So,
Yeah, I think people don't I think that a lot of people who haven't gone through it don't understand the complexity of it that it does to your body. It's attacking every part of your system, everything. And so there's so many layers to that. And a lot of people think that when you're mold sick that you're sneezing and you're coughing and maybe you're having some trouble breathing and maybe your eyes are watering. And I'm like, "Oh, please give me that any day over what I experienced?" I wish that's all it was. And I know some people might react that way, like it's kind of like a seasonal allergy thing, but I've dealt with I'm in Tennessee. I've dealt with seasonal allergies since I was young, and if that's all it was, I wouldn't have noticed. I would have never noticed because that's something that was on the table every day when you live here. And there's just no way just to get over it. But I don't think, and I'll say like that's another thing just to touch on, I guess, is how we feel about other people having feelings about us. Does that make sense?
yeah, exactly.
When you understand that other people are thinking that you're crazy, or even people that you love and are supposed to be on your side, think maybe you're pretending or you're crazy or this isn't really happening and they're like gaslighting you, like I guess that's where some of that resentment can come in too, is like, why don't you believe me? You're supposed to care about me and love me. And, why am I having to fight so hard for myself, I guess?
Yeah. So for me personally, I luckily didn't experience that as much as other people experience that. There was a lot of minimizing with some of my family members. They minimized the situation. So that was always hurtful, but they were supportive, as in, like, they gave us a place to stay. They helped with some of the remediation, but there was a lot of minimizing, but not overtly like some people go through. That's hard to explain. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but there was a lot of minimizing, which really hurt my feelings a lot. And I felt so resentful. And I still kind of, that's something that I'm struggling with after, with the adjusting to life after mold remediation, is the resentment that I get. And I guess some of the examples of the minimizing would be, well, you know, are you sure it's not just like this thing? Like, oh, I always feel that way when the seasons change or allergies come. I always get that symptom or something, like trying to kind of dismantle or disprove in a way that it was mold that we were going through, but in the nicest way possible,
But still it's there. And I think we already question ourselves and we don't want it to be happening. And we would love for someone to say, no, that's not really happening, right? I mean, how many people went to so many doctors trying to, figure out what it was? It can't be that it's mold,
Yeah.
because we don't want it to be that either. Because I think at the same time, we were doing enough research to realize how bad this could get and how bad this could be. 'Cause when I first got into it, it was the fear mongering and it was you have to walk out of your house right now and leave everything behind. And I couldn't. So I had to figure out what else I could do. But, it's not like this is what we wanted to happen. We would have loved for it to be that we just had a cold, right? Like, so we really, it would have been helpful, I think, to have people to be on board enough to help us walk through some of that. And I know a lot of people did have that. But one thing I was really dealing with resentment about was other people complaining about everyday life stuff. Like, I can remember I think I was at a conference for work or something, and we had all gone out to eat that night. And we were all sitting around, and I remember I was already in that, like, those commercials where they just describe and show the depression, where people are like sitting and everyone's like blurring beside them, and you're just sitting there. The blurring
Yeah.
is just, people are just going on about their lives and you're just there. that's how a lot of people describe grief too. But I literally was sitting at the table with people and they were chit chatting and complaining about little ordinary stuff. And I just was like sitting there and I could feel it. It was like everybody was just spinning around me and they were just going on about their lives and they had all these minor problems. And I was sitting there and I felt so dissociated from myself. Like I had to get out of my body because all I could think was if this was all that I had to complain about, you guys don't even know, you know. And I couldn't relate and I couldn't even talk about it. I sat there as quiet as could be and did not even get into a conversation because I was like, what, how am I supposed to drop this bomb that this is what I'm dealing with? So I just sat there.
Oh my gosh, Stacey, I relate to that so much. I was not in a mentally healthy place at one point. Um, and I was having this conversation with a couple people and they started making these like silly complaints. I literally like got up and just left just because I was not in a good headspace. Um, so yeah, I really struggled with that as well.
Yeah, because what do you say? Like, you don't want to be rude. You don't want to like discount what they're going through. And you definitely can't tell your story because it's like going to damper the whole night, right? You're like,
Yeah,
these people are just out chit chatting and having a dinner. Like, what am I can't just tell them all about what's going on.
yeah. And I recognize now that in my head, I I had it wrong, because everyone can experience hard times and no matter how, you can't compare people's hard times to yours. But I think it just goes back with the heaviness that you feel. Like you're like, I feel like I can't even engage in this conversation because I feel so heavy. And if I start sharing, it's going to get too heavy
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Too heavy.
and I'm going to dampen it. Yeah. So, and then I was thinking also, when we were talking about, resentment, that I feel a lot of resentment that people, I feel pressured to move on. And people say, they tell me, well, at least you have like this brand new house pretty much because it had to be, remediated and rebuilt. Like at least you have that. And like, at least you're over it. Why aren't you happier? Why haven't you moved on? And I feel so much resentment for that. Like it feels like it minimizes what I went through. So that's something that I'm really, really struggling with at this point of my life.
That's where you're at. That's kind of where you're at right now because you're still in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. And it does feel like people just want you to move on, like when you get past the remediation phase, because it's like, I wonder if the other people on the outside of this are like just taking a breath, like, oh, they're finally done. And maybe we don't have to hear about this anymore. Or,
yeah, yeah. I did feel like people were kind of getting sick of my complaining. And I'm not a complainer. I really try not to just complain about every little thing to others. I'm actually someone that is the opposite of that. It takes me a lot to say what's going on with me. But I talked about it a lot because it was big. It was my whole life. My whole life was being interrupted, every aspect.
every aspect.
I just felt like people were getting sick of hearing about it and thinking that I was a complainer and that I was just complaining about every little thing. But it was because every little thing, was disrupted. So I I really struggled with that too, and still kind of struggle with it to this day because I'm still kind of like processing and grieving and moving on, and things aren't quite where I would like them to be. And also financially, I just lost like hundreds of thousands of dollars, so life is harder for me right now. And so when people feel like I should move on and not complain because, everyone has problems, I get resentful that because I just feel like if other people were going through this, they would understand, but
Yeah. And I think that the issue is that, like, okay, if there's our other normal problems, like, not that they're not problems, because I mean, when I didn't have mold toxicity and didn't deal with the financial issues and all things we're dealing with, other things would bother me. I mean, I'm kind of like you, like, I'm not going to complain about it a lot. Things don't really get me like way upset. So I was usually like pretty cool about things, if someone bumped into the back of my car or my tire was low, or I wasn't a type of person that just went like berserk. I was like, okay, we'll fix it, it'll be okay, kind of person. But there's a lot of people out there that are not like that, and those things, get them pretty upset. And when you see people getting so upset about those things, but you're like, I wish that's all I was dealing with right now. That, like you said, that resentment can set in because it's just so hard to deal with. And then they, on the opposite side, think that our problems with the mold toxicity are not that big of a deal. And they're like, oh, well, at least your car's running right now. And I'm like, so it's like like you said, they kind of get tired of hearing about it. But what do we do when it is happening and it is so detrimental that people don't understand? And the funny thing is too, is like people kind of, I think, got tired of hearing, oh, it's mold, oh, it's mold, it's mold, it's mold. They get kind of tired of hearing that from you. And so you just kind of have to learn who you can talk about some things around and maybe who you can't. It's like you learn who in your life has become more of your people, and who are able to go that deep with you versus the ones that maybe are just going to be kind of on surface level, where we have to keep them.
yeah, and I think that's something that I'm struggling with because before all of this happened, I would be able to just hold something in. Like if something was bothering me, I can just not talk about it because not, everyone doesn't need to know my problems. It's not everyone else's problem. But right now, at my stage of life, I am having a hard time being around others if they can't listen to what's going on with my life because I feel like it has been falling apart, for a couple of years. And it's not just like a little thing, or just one hard thing. It's like all of these hard things building up over time. So that's, I'm really struggling with being able to be around others who can't hold that space for me.
Yeah, I think it's a whole nother layer. It's a whole nother level of things that we never thought we would have to deal with. The life becomes complicated in every single aspect, relational, financial, physical, everything. And I think that what happens when you go through the mold issue is that you change as a person, you change as a human being. And it doesn't matter what age you are. You could be 60, 70, and never think that, you're set in your ways, but it's going to change you. And I think that sometimes what's hard to say out loud is sometimes it changes you for the better, even though I would never ask to go through this again. I would never. I've heard people say, oh, it was a blessing for me and all of that. And I'm like, I don't think I'm there. And I don't know if I'll ever be there. Maybe one day, but I can say that there are things that I realized that I think I got sicker because some things needed to change about the way that I was relating to people. And so, because we're talking about this, like, how do you relate to people after remediation? I think this is what I'm getting at, is that it changed how I was relating to people because of what I went through. And some of it I think was for the good.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to decipher. Am I just more real now? Like, am I just expecting more of these relationships? Or do I need to be able to discern who I can tell things to and not, and be okay with that because, my problems aren't everyone else's problems. So that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out myself.
I think for me, what it is, and almost kind of what it sounds like you're kind of getting through on your end, is it's kind of about boundaries. And maybe we didn't have the best boundaries before. And then when we go through mold sickness, we had to learn to put those boundaries in place, to get through what we were going through. Because I think a lot of us who get sick are naturally rescuers and fixers, and we hold on to other people's emotions and we allow certain boundaries to be pushed, when we shouldn't. And we know that is proven that disease, the emotions and toxicity that are held in our body, just like toxins, mold toxins that can't get through our fascia, when our fascia is all tight and wound up. The same thing with that trauma and emotions are held in our body. And so I think for some of us, we're kind of primed to get more sick from mold toxicity because our nervous system is already inflamed, from maybe prior trauma or emotional trauma that we've had. And so, for one thing, I can say is that I feel like with the mold problems, that I have definitely gotten better at setting healthier boundaries in my life. And I think it's okay to hold certain people at a distance. I don't think it's that you're mean or that you're cold or that mold like made you some cold person. I think that it just kind of helps you learn how to relate and pick the people you relate to differently in a more positive way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of us didn't have boundaries before, and probably took on more than our bodies should have been able to handle, and which is how we got so sick. And then since you went through the mold process, it's kind of like having a gaping open wound, but then people still expecting the same amount from you. But they can't see that gaping open wound.
Right. Right.
So it's your responsibility to put in those boundaries.
Right. And it's your responsibility to put the boundaries in and not our responsibility to help the other person through our boundaries. Deal with what our boundaries are there for. But it is definitely it was definitely a new experience for me. And even though, I'm a therapist and I know what healthy boundaries look like in everyone else's life, it doesn't mean that that just spills over very easily, personally.
Yeah.
But I have to say that there, even recent in my life, there are some things that I was able to do very easily that I would not have done before. And did it feel unfamiliar? Yes. I was like, later on, I was like, wow, I did that. And I don't think I would have done that. Like, I don't think I would have confronted that person or been that assertive or said, this is not my job today to do this for you. But I've gotten a lot better at it. And I will say that is a really good thing that has come from this for me. And I feel like that I'm going to be able to continue that, on down the road because I can tell the difference in myself when I do that. I can tell that I don't get into like this rescue problem solver. I've got to fix everything for everybody. And then the resentment doesn't set in later,
Yeah.
because I didn't cross the line, I didn't cross a line that I
Yeah.
shouldn't have crossed.
Yeah, I agree. I got to the other side, which, yeah, we keep saying quotations because there's not really another side, and I think we plan on talking about that. But I got to the other side, and I'm just like, oh, I've had it, and so yeah, my boundaries are so high now, and I think, they need to sort of level out. I maybe have overcorrected, but yeah, that's just what happened is that my boundaries felt pushed and pushed and pushed, whereas I didn't have any before. And so it's learning to navigate the balance. And that is one gift that Mold has brought me is teaching me boundaries.
Yeah. I think I feel like just about all of us, when we talk about that, everybody has agreed with that. I've heard that from a lot of people. So let's talk about the other side. When we get to that point, why can't we just move on, Baylie? Why are we just not over it? Like, what is it?
I mean, I think there's so many layers to that. I think because it was so heavy for so long, and that's why it's hard to move on. But also, what I think we're getting at is there another side? Can do you just go back to the life that you had before? I don't think so. I don't know. I don't think so. I haven't heard of anyone being whole, again. And I don't say that in a negative way because it doesn't have to be negative. I just think that life as you knew it doesn't necessarily go back to where it was before. But it can be a positive thing. We can take all of these lessons that we've learned and all of these boundaries and, get to a different way of living, a different perspective.
Yeah, I think, the reality of it is that this kind of experience doesn't just end. Our body has been through something, our nervous system has been through something, our life has been completely disrupted for most of the people years. This, like we said before, I know a lot of people have, I don't know if just 2 years is pretty popular but I've heard a lot of it's taken a couple of years to get through it. Because it's in layers, and a lot of times when you are trying to tackle remediation, you think it's one thing in your house. And I know you experienced this, oh, I found it. We found it. Yay, let's fix it. And then we're done. And then you realize, through either, I know for us at the beginning when we initially remediated the crawl space, which is all we thought the problem was, I think that the toxic load was lowered enough to start feeling like we were healing. And then we weren't again later. And then it was like, okay, wait, and then it was, okay, now we have to do the HVAC. And then we thought we were getting better. And then wait, the rains came last spring in Tennessee. And then we realized there was more, So it's like, it's layers upon layers. And I know a lot of people have had, okay, our sink, and then it's the shower, and then it's the attic. And I just think that when that happens to people, because initially, you may think it's just the one thing in your house, and then here comes something else, and here comes something else. It is a trauma, right? It is a trauma. You are experiencing this over and over again, and it becomes compounded. And I think in a real way, a lot of us feel like it's not over. When people say it's over, we don't believe it. Do you feel like that? I don't know if I believe it right now in my house. I still feel like I need to test someone.
Yeah, because when I was going through remediation, it was sort of like pulling at a thread that just kept coming and coming and coming. And we've got it to a point where it's livable. But I don't believe that we have it all. And so I think it is going to be an ongoing issue. And the way that houses are built, you are going to have to stay on top of it. And now that we got so sick and chronically sick and ill, I think we're possibly always going to be susceptible to these issues. I don't really know when it's over. For me, I'm still healing. I have like right now as we speak, I have like a lot of brain fog and word recall, and it got better. But for some reason, the last 3 weeks it just hit me again, and I'm really, really struggling. And I actually have been sick, and I don't know if now maybe my seasonal allergies just look different than they used to, or if it's something in the house, but I think we're always going to be playing that game where am I just regular sick or am I mold sick?
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I absolutely hear that because anytime, like if we all have the cycle of where our hair falls out normally, right? But now, if my hair is falling out, I'm like, wait, is there more mold in the house? Because that was a big thing for me. I lost probably about half of my hair, and so it's the trauma of that. My if my hair starts falling out, and if I have too much brain fog, I feel like we should have a disclaimer on our podcast, like when we say this is Sporecast, we should say like if you're having a hard time following us today, remember we may have brain fog.
Oh my gosh, I know.
I still struggle when I'm talking. I'm like trying to think of what I'm saying, and it's a struggle. But and then, like you said, it's the trauma. It's like, okay, I feel like I have more brain fog today. Is that just because maybe I didn't get enough sleep last night, or is it mold? And then even if we have done a really good job on our house and remediated, is it because our workplace has it, or, wherever our family members were staying at, or the last Airbnb we stayed in, or whatever, you get really worried and it's just everything starts to feel like it's mold all the time. We don't really get that regular sick feeling. We get sick and then we have trauma from it, you know.
Yeah, the last couple days I've been brushing my hair and it's just like coming out and I'm like, ah,
Mm-hmm.
is that the mold? Is that normal? I don't know.
Well, I think it's so scary too because we know if we've left any behind, it's probably, I mean, there's the leaving some of the mycotoxins behind and things like that. If obviously you can't your small particle cleaning and doing all the HEPA vacuuming and stuff, but we know we can't get it all. But if we're leaving the mold behind somewhere, that might mean that it's because there's a actual issue and there's mold growth. And if we have left it and we didn't know it was there, then we know it's going to keep growing. So it's like, okay, if it's raining a lot outside and I haven't gotten all of it, I didn't find all of it, it's going to grow and it's going to get worse. And we are all like, we know mold grows 24 to 48 hours. So it feels like you always have to be on.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, I'm still dealing with cross contamination. I actually have been bringing some things into my house lately. Maybe that's why I'm feeling this way, but from storage, and we're like, oh, we feel so much better. So I think we're ready to take on some of our stuff from storage. But yeah, maybe we weren't quite ready because I've just been having like a really, really hard few weeks. The hardest part for me is the brain fog. Like I feel like I feel like I would take the physical sicknesses that I get over the brain fog anytime because I feel like I'm losing my mind and I feel like when I'm having a conversation with somebody, I immediately forget what I'm just about to say. I can't my word recall is poor. I can't quite make up sentences the way that I used to.
Yeah, I really struggle with that too. I think I'm saying something and I'm like, I don't think I said what I meant. I don't think that was at all what I was trying to say. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, exactly. I know what I'm saying in my head, but I can't quite get it out, the words out. So,
I think another aspect about, is this over? Can we celebrate? And I think that's the big thing is we can't, it's not like we're not throwing parties around here when we're done, like with remediation, right?
yeah,
Because we don't get to have this big celebration. There's no ending. And I think that's what's the trauma piece to that is life after remediation. I will say I definitely at the beginning of this was like, if I can just get to this and get it done, then I'm going to feel better and everything's going to be better. And I think that's a big part of it that, I want people to know that life after remediation is good in the fact that you can start to heal, you can see some success, and you have kind of control over some things and you have a grasp at what needs to be done. But I just want to speak truth too that, there's not some big party that we're throwing and celebrating because we don't know if we're there yet. And I want people to know that's a normal feeling. It's normal to feel that.
yeah. And for both of us, and for both of us, it's not our first remediation. And so, yeah, before we thought it was, and we had to go through remediation again. And so that's why we don't exactly feel settled. But yeah, to what you were saying, I do want to put the realness out there that, yeah, after remediation, there are still struggles with grieving, processing, mourning. But I do want to say this. I've particularly had a bad few weeks, but there have been moments that have been really beautiful. Like just even cooking for my family, I'm like, oh my gosh, I never appreciated this as much as I do now because I wasn't able to cook for my family for a long time. I watch my kids play in the backyard and I've literally started crying because I'm like, at one point, I couldn't even imagine this happening. It just seems so distant to me, and the fact that it's happening is unbelievable. And so these moments are happening that I couldn't have, or that I was just dreaming of, and so that's really beautiful. And so there are really good parts to being post remediation, and so I don't want to scare anybody, but we do want to be real.
Yeah, for sure. But yes, there are many times where I have felt so much more connected with myself. And I'm like, oh, there I am. I felt those moments. There I am. Like, dancing with my son in the kitchen one time, laughing. And I was like, oh, there's the old me. It's going to take, everyone's different. We can't, say how long it takes for anyone to heal emotionally, physically, your house, anything. But you're going to feel those moments where you're coming back to yourself. And that is so much hope. And yes, we all still have to watch out for our house. We still have to check. We still have to, know how high the humidity is. We still have to make sure we're maintaining our house and stuff. But it's a different kind of feeling. Yes, there's some trauma to it, but there's also like this empowerment of like, I know what I'm doing now. I know how to handle this. And I know that it will never get back to what was going on
Right,
before.
because
So I do want people to know that. You have the knowledge and you have the power now. So that's the big thing I would say as we're ending. I really want people to see is find those times where you're reconnecting with yourself and that moment that you feel yourself again. Like you said, cooking for your family in the backyard with your kids, and you're like, there's Baylie.
yes,
She's here.
yes,
Find yourself, come back to yourself, you know, take those moments to draw strength and know that you're going to be okay. You're going to get through it. Like it feels like you're never going to get through it.
it does.
Right?
Yeah,
It does. But you are. And you will always need to stay on top of things because you don't want it to go back to what it was. But you're going to have, there's hope in the process, and there's knowledge, and there's power, and there's community, just joining in with people who can have these kind of conversations with you that really, really understand. Find someone who really understands. Don't expect to talk to your neighbor who's never been through mold about this, right? You can talk to your neighbor about other things, but
yeah,
find people who understand.
yeah, and you're equipped now. So
Yes, absolutely.
I would way rather, even though I'm struggling right now in the moment, I would take this over the hell that was the last 2 years. Well, I think we could talk about this forever. I feel like so much to talk about, but yeah, I could talk about this forever. This was great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having the conversation, just opening up for people to be able to relate and listen to this kind of conversation. It's so important.
Yeah. Thank you, Stacey.
Yes.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Sporecast. If something in this episode resonated with you, we'd love for you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. And we'll see you next time.